Alrighty, guys. I'm the Dude 5 back here with another video. And today I'm going to be doing, first of all, 4th of July 2019. Happy 4th of July to anyone celebrating today. Hope you all can hear me clearly enough. I'm going to be I'm doing my best to do a spoiler-free review of Spider-Man Far From Home. This is officially the end of Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 3. After Avengers Endgame. I'm just trying to figure out where I should start, because for a very long time, for someone that's as big a Spider-Man fan as I am, it's been kind of a long and difficult road for Spider-Man on the big screen, because some moments in movies have been good, others have been bad. So with Spider-Man in the MCU, they decided to show a side of Peter that rarely has been seen on the big screen, and that's the take that he's a teenager in high school, all right, and he's being burdened with so much responsibility at a very young age. Someone who would be more than happy just to, live his normal life, but he has these powers, and like it or not, he either has to choose to use them or not. And so, with Spider-Man in the MCU, they get to show a side of Peter Parker that's rarely seen, and that's more of a young teenager in high school. There's still a bit of him that's still young and naive, obviously, and going through changes. And he's just trying to find a girl that he likes, that he can try to, spend any amount of, normal time with. And it's like, you can't do both. You've never been able to do both. You either have to. That's always been the struggle of Peter Parker. It's like he tries to juggle the normal life with being the superhero, and sometimes he succeeds. Most times, he fails, and so that's always been his struggle. And so, I will say that without giving anything away, there are similarities between Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home, plot-wise, as far and also as far as like the villains are concerned. They do both draw a lot of similarities between the two different movies. And I mean, obviously, both villains from Spider-Man Far From Home and Spider-Man Homecoming, they're not exactly the same villain, but they go about using similar plot devices in building up the villains in both movies. One of the main things that I don't like about these new Spider-Man movies, I mean, first of all, getting Spider-Man to be a part of the MCU and a part of the Avengers now is something that a lot of fans have wanted for a very long time. And to put a younger Peter Parker in there with all these like pro-adult heavy hitter Avengers, it's different. It is different. It's something that hasn't been done before. And so to see a kid like this be able to kind of, in a way, through the Avengers, through becoming an Avenger, and just to thrust a kid into this vast, almost dark, and just insane world, to put a kid in the midst of all this, it's pretty scary. It is. And but to see him really try to come into his own and hold his own. Putting a younger teenage high school Peter Parker in with the Avengers is kind of almost like an origin story for him that we haven't really seen before. It's essentially his Avengers origin story, and it's taken at least 2 or 3 movies to see him really, you know, it took him lending a hand in Civil War to trying to stop the villain that was, you know, coming around in in New York City trying to stop the Vulture when others were telling him just to lay low, especially since the Sokovia Accords were now a thing. They didn't want to, Tony didn't want to see him get in trouble with that. Him trying to, display that, look, I'm not a helpless kid. I do have these powers, and yeah, I am young and naive, but that doesn't mean I can't do what you guys do, type of thing. And so essentially from Civil War, Spider-Man Homecoming, Infinity War, and Endgame, and now Spider-Man Far From Home is essentially like the full cycle of his kind of Avengers origin story and him kind of coming into his own as a hero. And it's done very, very well. And it's a side of Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and it's a type of superhero story that we haven't really seen yet before, done with Spider-Man. And it's good and it's bad. Back to the main point I was going to get to. As far as when you're trying to tell this kind of story with Spider-Man comes his love interests. And his love interests have already kind of been shown on the big screen, both with MJ in the first 3 Spider-Man movies and then with Gwen Stacy in Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. So it's not that Zendaya, who plays MJ in Homecoming and Far From Home, for me, it has nothing to do with the actress herself. It has nothing to do with the color of her skin. I feel like it has everything to do with the screenwriters and the directors and the way they choose to portray MJ in these Spider-Man movies that I don't like. Because first and foremost, I mean, you could cast whoever you want in the role. Doesn't matter the hair color. For me, it kind of matters the hair color because MJ is a redhead. Yeah, she's white, but she's a redhead. It doesn't really matter. It just, MJ is very, shall we say, very extroverted, can be very sarcastic. She's a very, very, very much a type A personality. And obviously there's a lot of parts of Peter that are introverted and that have to be because he has to safeguard his identity all the time. So the way they portray MJ in these movies is very introverted, but also very observant and sarcastic and very afraid to let people close. So she has to kind of mentally and verbally attack people in order to try to keep them at bay. And it does service in a very humoristic kind of way. Humorous. I'm trying to use real words here. There are bits of it that can be humorous, but in most part, it does disservice to the character of MJ. It's like if you're gonna portray the character, and even as a love interest to Peter, then you have to portray the character as, the way that she is. And it's like they even messed up her name. Like in Spider-Man Homecoming, at the very end, she says, "What's your real name again?" And it's like, "Oh, my name's Michelle, but most people just call me MJ." And I'm like, I don't know. The only thing about these newer Spider-Man movies is part of the MCU is that I don't feel like they portray MJ, right? MJ's name is Mary Jane Watson. Yes, she does come from a slightly abusive household. Her father is a dick, but she doesn't let that stop her. So I don't like the way that they portray MJ in these movies. So, I'm trying to think of what else I could say without giving away anything. These Spider-Man movies are very much entangled with the rest of the events of the Avengers. Spider-Man: Homecoming took place directly after the events of Civil War, and Tony Stark very much becoming the mentor / father figure of Peter Parker. And so, and him being a very influential part of his life. And Tony telling Peter, like, look, just be a very small time hero, but try not to deal with any bigger threats that might be outside of out of your league, essentially. And but since Peter is who he is, and he is a hero, and he's trying to be the hero, is like, there's just, like every hero, there's no quit in him. And when he sees a situation headed south, he can't ignore it. Captain America's words. And so, it's very hard it's very difficult to see this version of Peter Parker and Spider-Man go through what they go through, because it's like they take the great power, great responsibility whole shtick, and they put it on a young teenager, and all of his role models are just putting him through the grinder. It's like they're telling him not to be who he is and not to do what he knows he needs to. And then after the fact, and after Endgame, and after Tony Stark dies, and it's like now his main role model and father figure is gone. And now he's being thrust into the limelight, and he's being asked to live up to that. Okay? And it's just not possible. He's never going to live up to who someone else was. He just needs to live up to who he is and do the best that he can do. It's like, stop putting that much pressure on a young boy's shoulders and just let him be who he feels is the best that he can be. And again, it plays into the whole identity crisis sort of thing that Peter usually ends up going through a lot of times. So, but as far as the action sequences in this movie, holy shit, they're amazing. Like, much better than the action sequences in Homecoming. Homecoming was very different. It was as far as like the action sequences go, they put Spider-Man in a lot of scenarios where his specific skill set, with his web shooters and his combat style, he struggled a lot. He struggled a lot to gain equal footing with his enemy, and mainly because his enemy flies. Like, they took Spider-Man out of the city and they put him in situations where it was much more difficult for him to swing around and be as good of an acrobat as he is. So in Far From Home, they put him in a lot of scenarios where it was fight for your life and very in his face. As far as like the action sequences and the combat between him and the villains, whatever. Try not to give anything away too much. But overall, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. So obviously, if you're a fan of Spider-Man and you're a fan of the comics, go see this movie. And the advice that I would give you if you're watching this is to just go into these movies to try and appreciate it for what it is, and try not to read too much into it. And I feel like, and here's where I'm gonna kind of get into my rant. And I've said this in past videos and in past movie reviews, and I even said it in my last movie review of X-Men Dark Phoenix. I feel like maybe because of the critics, both online and professional film critics, that get paid essentially, I feel like, to be overly critical and talk trash about a movie instead of just being able to enjoy it and actually commend it for what it's done well and then critique it for what it hasn't done well. I feel like an honest critic. Yes, I'm a fan of these movies, so sometimes it can be hard to take a biased look, to take a biased and unbiased look. If you're going to critique something, anything, whether it be art, a video game, a movie, anything, a book, anything, if you're going to critique anything, what you need to do is you need to take an honest survey and experience of whatever media you're digesting, okay? You need to go over the entire thing and pick out the parts that you did like and you didn't like. Like, commend something for what it's done well, and then critique it for what it hasn't, for what it could do better, okay? That's what a critic should do. That's how you should critique something. In middle school and high school, and even in college, I went through a lot of music and art classes, so it's like I know how to critique things. I know how to formulate what I feel is a genuine, true, honest opinion of something, especially when it comes to things that I love, down to my very heart and soul. And Spider-Man is way fucking up there for me, okay? If I'm not the biggest fucking Spider-Man fan in the world, I am one of the biggest. Okay, I know practically everything there is to know. And you guys know this about me. You do. From past videos, from reviews, and even when I played Marvel Spider-Man for PS4. Great fucking game, by the way. Oh my God. Go watch that series on my channel, please, because it's so good. And Stanley passed away in the middle of me doing that series. So it was very sad, but, you know, that ship has sailed. So this is essentially the rant section of this. I really hate to see, even before like a movie like this has premiered, this movie pretty much wraps up all of Marvel Phase 3. And I'm not going to spoil anything. There are there's the mid-credit scene and then the end credit scene that kind of set the stage for further installments, and also the future of the MCU in a sense. The very end credit scene, not the mid-credit scene, but the end credit scene, I was not expecting, but I feel like it tied into and set up the future of the MCU so beautifully that I am just so pleased with what they did. If you want to know what I'm talking about, go see Spider-Man Far From Home and watch it all the way through from beginning to the very end of the credits. I personally don't think you'll be disappointed. Again, very much like with X-Men Dark Phoenix, and I've also said it before in the past with Ant-Man and the Wasp. If you guys remember from my X-Men Dark Phoenix spoiler review, I talked to you guys about the fact that when Ant-Man and the Wasp came out in theaters, I very much wanted to see it, obviously because it was a Marvel movie and it part of the MCU, and one of the last movies it took place after Infinity War, but before Captain Marvel and Endgame. I told you guys how, because I let outside influences and internet and reviews and everyone I knew was saying it was bad and that it wasn't good, and even my own mother, I think, actually saw it or had heard that it wasn't good. So because of that, I let outside influences tell me that it wasn't good, and that kept me from seeing it. That made me break my tradition of seeing every Marvel movie and not missing a Marvel movie in theaters. That made me break tradition. Other people's negative opinions. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. Look, it's a free fucking country. And, I can't stop you from thinking and feeling however you're going to think, whatever you're going to think and feel about anything. We can only control ourselves and our own actions. Okay? We're human beings. And we're all going to think and feel what we're all going to think and feel. That's just the way it is. And it's very hard for me to try and accept that in the grand scheme of things, because I'm a very strongly opinionated person and I'm a control freak. I really am. So it's hard for me to just sit by. And when people, I feel like, are just formulating the wrong opinions based off of other people's opinions and other bullshit that they've heard. So very much like with Ant-Man and the Wasp and X-Men Dark Phoenix, it's like when I see these movies for myself that I genuinely enjoy, and then I take a second and third look, and then I kind of start to pick apart the things that I can understand why people don't like it. I can understand why people don't like it, but so if you're not going to like it for those reasons, then don't like it for those reasons. Okay? But again, online critics and movie critics are giving low scores on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't give a fuck about that site anymore. I really don't. Negative reviews, low scores on Rotten Tomatoes of Spider-Man Far From Home, saying it was not as good as it could have been, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you know what? Firstly, I feel like it was better than Homecoming. Okay, I really do. I feel like because, and very much like Homecoming, it picks up right after Endgame. The Spider-Man movies, much like the Ant-Man movies, pick up either before or after major happenings in the MCU. Homecoming picks up directly after Civil War, directly after the Sokovia Accords. And Endgame Far From Home picks up directly after Endgame. And the impact of Tony's death is still very much having an effect on Peter and how he is now going about his real life and his superhero life. And they even show it in the trailers. So, and they showed it in the trailers after Endgame had premiered and after they lifted the spoiler ban on. That's when the Far From Home trailer started showing the aftermath of Tony Stark's death. And there's even a really funny joke in Far From Home, but I'm not going to give it away. It's good though. It's really good. It's perfect. It's so in line with Tony's ego too. So just negative critic reviews. And it's like, I've said it once and I'll say it again. Whether you're a fan of these films or not, overall, almost every MCU movie that I have seen in some way, shape, or form has not been all bad. Even Iron Man 3, which again, I've expressed that, in my opinion, is the worst Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. When I say Marvel Cinematic Universe, I mean everything from Iron Man 1 now through to Far From Home. Those movies. The Avengers movies. Okay? Even Iron Man 3, as a movie, was very entertaining. Again, parts of it I didn't like. A lot of parts of it I didn't like. So, again, there are pretty much parts of all the MCU movies that are both good and bad, but not all of them are all bad. Most of them are almost all good. I really don't have anything bad to say about most of them. I genuinely enjoy the actors that they have cast in the roles. Aside from Brie Larson, I feel like they could have picked someone else for Captain Marvel, but she does a serviceable job in the role. Okay. I'd like to see more of her on screen in the role just to see if I enjoy her more in the role of Captain Marvel. I don't know. That's the only questionable casting choice I've had about the MCU, but otherwise, come on. Every single actor and actress that they have cast in these roles has been bred for it. Like, serious, they were born for these roles. And most of them are either Academy nominated or Academy Award winning actors and actresses. It's insane. Some of the star-studded cast throughout all the MCU is just mind-boggling. It's great. So it's what was I gonna say? So I genuinely don't understand. You know, these movies are so widely well received for the most part and critically acclaimed that it's like when I start feeling like I'm seeing a majority of people not receive it well, like they didn't like it. Well, it's like, why? You know, if you're going to let the parts of the movie that you didn't like ruin your whole overall opinion and experience of the movie, then why see it? Why see it if you're just going to sit there and have a negative opinion about it all? And for the fans, for the true fans who are both fans of the comics and the movies, if there's things that you don't like about the movie, I understand, but it's like, here's the thing. Nothing is going to stick 100% accurate to the source material. They're going to take most of the key points. More often than not, when it comes to books and comic books, things that are based off written stories. Okay. For the most part, they're going to stick to the main key plot points, but they're going to take certain creative liberties. Because these filmmakers, these producers, and these directors are in the business of making movies to make movies, and for them to not make everything exactly like the source material. I'm gonna get to that. Please, just let me do this. So especially when it comes to comic books and Marvel Comics in particular, since we're talking about Spider-Man, ever since Marvel Comics was created, ever since all these characters were created, over several years, over decades, there have been so many different stories and multiverse stories and reiterations and reincarnations of these characters that, oh my God, it is impossible. You have to like pick the story and run with it. You have to pick what story for these characters and these character groups that you want to tell and go with it. And if you whatever story and story arc for these characters and the character groups like X-Men and Fantastic Four and all that, whatever story arc you decide to go with and make a movie on, that's kind of what you have to stick with. But again, you're not going to stick exactly to it verbatim, because then true fans of these comic books are going to be like, okay, well, it's too predictable. Well, this happened exactly the way it was in the comics, but it's not going to be as entertaining for you, is it? It's just not. Now, I realize that statement can be a little bit hypocritical because for actual novel books like Harry Potter and The Hunger Games and all that stuff, when movies like that stick closer to the books, I feel like I'm more entertained by it and I can appreciate it more because of how well it followed the original source material. Obviously, you're not going to be able to put every little scenario, every little scene from the book, even the little stuff, and every little word. I mean, if you try to take the 500 whatever page book and turn it into, you're just not going to be able to fit that much book into a movie. It's just not possible. You'd have to make it a 3-parter. You know, it just, I have to try not to let this stuff get to me, but it's so hard to be as big of a fan as I am with this stuff and to see everyone online and in the media just shit all over it. I'm sick and tired of it. I try to ignore it the best I can. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's really hard. What irritated me, really the only complaint I have about Avengers Endgame, is how the fuck was Thanos worthy to wield Stormbreaker? Because Thor summons it when he's up against the ropes, and Thanos snatches it out of midair and presses it to its chest. And I'm like, how the fuck are you worthy to even wield that? There's no way. There's no way. I don't get that. That's the only complaint I have about the movie itself, personally. And then what really upset me, but even about Avengers Endgame, is that every single person I saw on social media and YouTube was literally relentlessly stopping at nothing to try to find plot holes, to poke flaws, to poke holes in the story in the movie. It's like, it's fucking flawless. Might as well be. It really, it just goes to show you that people will stop at nothing to make others feel just as shitty as they do. Even if you're the most well-rounded, well-adjusted person in the world, just keep your shitty. If you're just going to shit all over a movie for no reason, don't put your opinions out there. If you're genuinely going to critique something, take the pros and cons. That's what you should do in a critique of anything. That's how it's done. That's how it is done. Period. That's it. Case closed. So I wish I could go in depth about the entire plot of Far From Home, but again, this is a spoiler-free review. If you guys do want a spoiler-filled review of the entire plot of the entire movie, let me know in the comment section or in the live chat here. I am doing this live right now. But yeah. And another thing really when it comes to all this is that, again, like I said earlier, we can only control ourselves, our own thoughts and emotions and our own actions. What is presented to us is what is presented to us. And these movies and books, and they're presented to us for entertainment purposes, for entertainment value only. And I mean, that's not to say that there's not other people out there that don't love it, because there are. But for some reason, all I hear and see on social media is people crapping all over this. That's all I see is people crapping all over this. I don't see one positive opinion. I don't. That is what gets on my nerves. That's when it becomes hard for me to ignore that stuff, is when I see nothing but negative opinions and reviews about this kind of stuff. So again, if you're gonna critique something, take the pros and cons, commend the positive, critique the negative. And then, after that is said and done, formulate your own opinions. Okay? That is my unbiased opinion about that. So, again, there's really only one or two things about the newer Spider-Man movies and about Far From Home that I don't like. Other than that, everything else about the movie was beautiful. And I think the fact that they take a younger teenage high school Spider-Man and Peter Parker, the fact that they are portraying that side of him really kind of grounds and cements the character. Like it makes it a more grounded and somewhat more realistic story. And Marvel does this so well with each of its characters because they make them ultimately relatable. They really do. And I'll tell you this. Peter's friend Ned in Homecoming and Far From Home, I know you guys don't know what my friend Nightwolf, who you guys have probably seen me game with in the past, my friend Nightwolf is a copper-skinned Native American guy. He is. He's got long, dark hair. I don't know if he's got a haircut recently. It's a little pudgy. I'm not trying to insult him. I love the guy. He's like a brother to me. But he looks a lot like, maybe, again, not as overweight, but he looks a hell of a lot like Ned from Spider-Man Homecoming and Far From Home. And the relationship, the bro, relationship between him and Peter, it just ultimately reminds me of me and Nightwolf. So again, watching these movies then becomes that much more relatable for me and for him too. So it's like, so if you're watching this, Nightwolf, shout out to you essentially. But so it's little things like that. It's like, because at that point it feels like they reach inside your head and just pull whatever's in there and then throw it up there to be enjoyed. So the fact that I feel like, being the huge Spider-Man nerd that I am, and seeing seeing a Nightwolf dude relationship on that, it's so cool. It's really, that experience then becomes that much more intimate and special for people like me, which only makes me love it more. Marvel does this with each and every one of their characters. They make them so relatable. So relatable. Way more relatable than any other comic book character that's ever been created. Ever. Enough said. Wow. All right. I think I've gone on long enough. If there's any other topics that you guys feel I should have touched on, any other opinions I didn't really get to, I think I covered all my bases with what I wanted to say. Again, this is a spoiler-free review, so I'm not giving away the entire plot of the movie. For those of you that still haven't seen it, please do. And I know it's 4th of July weekend, so those of you that are celebrating, great. And then, maybe go see it this weekend or a different weekend. I mean, it falls on a Thursday, on a weekday today. So, but those are generally my spoiler-free opinions on Spider-Man Far From Home. And that's, I've said, I think, all I need to say about, whatever your opinions may be on stuff like this. Again, go see and digest the movie for yourself, and then critique it the way it should be critiqued. And don't just shit all over it. And don't let other people influence your own opinion. Only you can formulate your own opinion on something based on how you view it. So take things as they are, not as you'd like them to be. All that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If my opinion is unpopular, I don't care. It's mine. This is me. This is as real as I can possibly get, and I'm always real. So, thank you all so much for watching. My name's I'm the Dude 5. This is I'm the Dude Games. This has been another movie review, spoiler free. So, I hope you all enjoy this video. Please subscribe to my channel, click the bell icon for notifications, and follow me on Twitter. Link in the description below. I'll see you all out there.